Hey guys, it's CrystalRenèe here. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, thanks for joining. Okay, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you plants and propagations that I have in Perlite. And first up, we're going to start with this Monstera Thai Constellation. If you have been with my channel for some time, you would know that this plant used to be a very large plant when I received it. I almost lost this plant a couple of times due to root rot, threats, you name it. I was at a point where my plant was pretty much almost dead. And I spent so much money on this plant, I just had to do everything in my power to revive her. And one thing that I did not try was perlite. So I decided to place it in perlite, and it pushed out this small little deformed leaf here. Mind you, it already had this leaf, and it already had this leaf here, if you can see that. It had those two leaves. But if you look closely, those two leaves were damaged when the threats came. I'm going to turn it around so that you can see. They're pretty rotted. I probably can just go ahead and pull them off and it wouldn't make any difference, but because they are still green, I believe they're still photosynthesizing and helping the plant to grow. So I'm just going to keep them there until they naturally fall off. But when I put it in perlite, it did give me this wonky little half moon. So I was happy about that because I did see some growth. Let me get close up. It gave me this little wonky half moon leaf, and I was happy. And then it started to push out the newest leaf, which is this beautiful leaf here. So as you can see, there is hope. The perlite pretty much saved my Monstera Thai Constellation. It does have a little bit of new roots. You can't really tell because I did change the perlite on this particular plant. So this is fresh perlite that I placed it in, and I'm gonna continue growing it in perlite for a while until it pushes out maybe one or two more leaves and go from there. The part that has me nervous is converting it back to soil or leca. I'm not sure which one I will do. 9 times out of 10 it may be soil. I'm not sure. We shall see. But as you can see here, there is a place here. There's a node. I'm not sure if you can see that on camera. Let me get you in there. So right here, we'll turn it to the side. Right there is a node. Now I can cut it there and propagate this plant, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait till it grows a little bit larger and then possibly propagate her. But I do need to see much more growth than this, and then I will feel like I'm in the clear of doing whatever I need to this plant. But until then, she will live in perlite. Now I have this plant, which is a Philodendron Burley Marks variegata. This started out as a cutting from my mother plant, and it has now grown into its own plant. I pretty much rooted this plant in perlite, and It's been living its whole life in perlite, and it's still continued to grow. It is beautiful, and it's still putting out variegation. As you can see, has some nice roots and looking pretty good. This plant I don't plan to keep. I do have this plant posted for sale. And if any of you are interested in purchasing this plant from me, go ahead and DM me on my Instagram, and yeah, that's how you can reach out to me. Otherwise, I will be selling locally, but I don't mind shipping as well. This plant is growing very well, and whoever gets this plant will be a very lucky plant parent. As you can see, it has high variegation in the stem, as you can see. So this plant can push out variegation throughout its whole life, pretty much. So that is the second plant that I am growing in perlite and seems to be doing very well. Here I have is a Raphael Flora de Cursiva, one of the cuttings that I took from my mother plant, and I placed it too in perlite, and she too is doing very well. This plant is doing well. I'm just pushing down the perlite at the top. It's too far out. Just push it down a little bit. So as you can see, this plant is growing very well. It has a nice set of roots, and it's pushing out a new leaf there. Can't you see? It's pushing out a new leaf, and she's well on her way. As you can see, the leaf is very strong and shiny and beautiful. This is another plant that I do not plan to keep because I do have my mother plant, and at this point I don't need a lot of multiples in my collection because there's just not enough room for all the plants that I have. So I will be selling this plant as well. And I just have it placed in a vase. A little bit of water. As you can see, I don't know if you can see, but the water is about up to here. I don't have the water all the way up because you don't want your plants or cutting just sitting in the water. You want it to be able to wick up to the roots. So here we have also in perlite the Syngonium Elbow. This is a very small propagation that I took long ago, and I had it in just rooting in water at first, and it pushed out this pretty little leaf here. It pushed out that leaf in water, and then it pushed out an all white leaf that used to be here on this cutting, and that leaf since then has melted back. And I thought it wouldn't grow because, as you can see, there's hardly any green in the stem, just mostly white. So I don't know if you've heard, but when Syngoniums lose their color in the stem, 9 times out of 10 your plant won't survive because the white will keep melting. And I've pretty much been trying an experiment with this. I didn't want to let it go, and I just thought it was too cute to let go or to toss. So I've been growing it out to see just what it does. And as you can see, it has been producing green. whether the stem is white or not. It has been producing lots of green. Now this last leaf that's coming in, it's kind of hard to tell, but it looks predominantly white. It looks like it's going to be another all white leaf. So we shall see if it has any color. But I am going to continue to grow this plant for as long as it continues to grow. And hopefully down at the very bottom I have just a tad bit of green on the stem. Don't know if you can see that, but it's just the smallest little patch of green on that stem. So maybe, I'm not sure if that's enough to keep this plant going or not, but I will keep you guys updated on that. But so far, so good. Here in this jar, I have a few things going on. This is a Florida Ghost. It doesn't yet have any roots on it. One of my Florida Ghosts, one of my mini Florida Ghosts, hasn't been doing so well. As you can see, this leaf is just kind of wonky. So I cut it off and just trying to root it alone. This is another piece of the Florida Ghost here as well. I'm not sure if they will do anything in this perlite, but I am going to try. Now this long tendril here is a Monstera Peru. It was a single cutting. It was a one leaf cutting. The leaf did so well in perlite alone, and I just think it got to the point where I'm not sure if the perlite, if it had outgrown the perlite, should I say, or if it was time for me to water it. I don't know, but the leaf started to yellow and it was pushing out growth, but it was just a vine, which you see here, but there's a node here and a node here. So I decided to remove the yellowing leaf and place this back into perlite to see what it does. Now this cutting here, it has a very small set of roots. I don't know if you can see that. Let me get close. That little cutting here is a cutting of my Hoya carrii. As you can see, it's putting out 2 leaves and a peduncle from the looks of it. It's putting out all type of new growth on that cutting. So I'm not sure what that will turn out to be, but I'm going to go ahead and keep it in the perlite to see what happens with that. This is a cutting from one of my OG plants. I don't know if you guys remember, I won a Begonia maculata from the plant stand of Arizona, and this is a small cutting from it. I almost lost the whole entire plant, and I decided to take cuttings and try to root them. I've successfully rooted some and potted it up in soil now, but this little cutting was on its own, so I decided to toss it in some perlite to see what it does. It was growing very well for me under some great humidity, but I decided to place something else in that area. So I did recently remove this from under a dome where it was getting plenty of humidity, and I'm testing it in the natural air to see if it will continue to grow. So that is what's going on here. It doesn't have a very large set of roots just yet, but it's doing its thing. In here is a plant that I don't know if it will survive or what may happen to it. But I kept it just the way you will see, so that you can see that all propagations aren't perfect. But in here, I know it looks kind of gross, but we're gonna zoom in so you guys can see what I got you looking at. As you can see, sometimes if you don't uncover propagations that are in domes, it will create mold. And that is what this is doing. And you're wondering, what is that? What type of plant is that? And this is sadly my Plow Mania. I know guys. You're like, what? It is down to that? And yes, I don't know what that is growing on it. If you can tell me what these little speckles are that's growing on it, that would be some help. I am going to remove this long piece here because it's very soft and it is moldy. I'm going to remove that. And there is mold creating on its roots as well. But if you look down in there, I don't know if you can see down in there, it is trying to push out a new leaf. And that red piece here, that looks like root. And the leaf here is trying to push out at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some alcohol or some sort, and I'm going to try to remove all the mold you see and try to remove that soft area as well and see what happens. And hopefully I get it to grow. If not, sadly this baby will be tossed. But that is what I'm dealing with underneath that dome. So please be sure to air out your domes or any covered situation. Now I do have a second piece of Plow Mania, which I do have experience rooting Plow Mania in Perlite. I've rooted a cutting before, but I did sell it. But this particular cutting I will not be selling. I am keeping this one for myself. I did place it in Perlite. I did see a node on it. And as you can see, let's get close in there. As you can see, it's pushing out a new leaf, which I am very happy about. And to the touch, it is nice and firm. And it's not rotting at all. But it is growing, so I will keep a close eye on this cutting. Well, this node cutting, I should say, because it is doing pretty well. As you can see, it is starting to form some algae. That is what this green stuff is, you see. And that is normal, especially when you have cuttings placed inside a glass vase and there's no air hole, no drainage or anything like that. It is eventually going to turn green. It won't harm your plants or cutting, but if you let it go too long, it will have a bad odor to it, and eventually you will have to put it in some clean perlite. And that is what I did with all these cuttings and plants that you see. I did just recently convert them into new perlite because that old perlite it was in was a mess. And I'm gonna put some footage on the screen if I hadn't already so that you can see how bad it can get. But just remember to change it out from time to time. Even though I went as long as I did because I didn't want to disturb any roots, I also didn't want the roots to just turn green and look yucky and stink. So I did go ahead and change things out. Now I have two prop boxes here that I created. So in this prop box, you see I have some wet sticks. And I believe these are from my silver sword, philodendron silver sword. I almost lost my silver sword, and I just pretty much took wet sticks from her and placed it here, and now she's putting out all this new growth. And I'm going to continue to keep it inside this environment until it no longer fits, and I will place it into something different. But as you can see, algae too is forming in here, but it does have plenty of condensation in here, so I don't tend to bother it much unless it gets completely dried out. It's not many, just a few. I just transferred over here because the perlite was a lot cleaner. And yeah, I have some of my brandy in here because again, I almost lost that plant, and I'm just pretty much trying to propagate to save some of my plant babies. And so far so good. Both cuttings have put out new leaves since being in perlite. And I just took a few of the other cuttings from the box, well, two of them, and I placed them over here to see what they will do. So that is what I have going on as far as perlite propagation. So as you can see, this is some of the things that I have going on in perlite. And eventually I will be potting these up. They won't stay forever in perlite. I will eventually move them to soil, like whatever medium I choose for them. Hopefully you can save some plants and have success growing some of your props and plants in perlite. So until next time, happy growing. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the notification bell so that you never miss a post. Share with all your planty friends. And follow me on my Instagram so that we can interact.